Greetings, my wonderful jelly speeds, and welcome back to another episode of Monday Madness, the Monday show where I talk about anything and everything. And this week, we're doing a vaguely serious one, as serious as I ever get. Today, I'm going to be finally doing my top surgery video. Today is bang on 3 months. 3 months exactly since I had my surgery. I had it on the 11th of September and today is the 11th of December. So it's been 3 months. What do I look like 3 months on? What was the process like? What has been happening? What were the highs? What were the lows? I'm going to tell you all about it. And when I say I'm going to be brutally honest, I'm going to be brutally honest. All right, let's dive into it. Before we start, I would like to do a few trigger and content warnings. So bear in mind and listen up for these. So first off, quite obviously, this video is going to talk about body dysmorphia. I can't pronounce that word. Dysphoria, that thing. Gender dysmorphia, that one. Mental health, things like that. There is also going to be scars. I'm going to show you pictures of my scars and how they've been healing. I'm going to talk very openly and honestly about my mental health, my journey, how this affected me, how I was feeling. If you guys are not ready to hear or think about any of that, please feel free to skip this video, come back when you are ready. There's also going to, and don't panic about this, it will be relevant later, and I will explain why. I'm going to very briefly touch on drug abuse and withdrawal, and don't worry, I'm fine, but I need to bring that up because for some people that is not a topic they want to hear about, and it will come up later on in the video. And then there are sort of general things like discussions of surgery, medication, nausea, a hell of a lot of vomiting, things like that. So if you're not ready to hear about any of those things, skip this video and come back another time when you are. And another thing just before we start, I would also like to make very, very clear, I am talking about my experience. Everyone's experience is going to be different, and this is mine. I am not giving you medical advice, so just putting that out of the way before we start. I'm not a doctor, I'm talking about my experience. Please, please, please don't rely on my medical anything before you get anything done. All right, on with the video. Let's talk about top surgery. As I promised to be brutally honest and upfront in this video, I will start off by saying I went private. I am currently living in the UK. We have the NHS, but let me just read you this right now. I am looking at the Gender Identity Clinic's website right now. The number of people on their waiting list are 14,629 as of today, the day I'm recording this video and the day that it is posting. The number of referrals they received in the last month is 363. And possibly the worst thing I've read in a long time, they are currently offering first appointments to people who were referred in November 2018. That's 5 years ago. I am not old, but I am not young, and I do not want to spend another 5 years waiting for a first appointment to even get the ball rolling. So I pooled all my resources together. I have had to borrow some money, and I managed to get it all together enough that I could go private. It was not cheap. It was not as expensive as I was worried it would be, but it was not cheap. All together to go private for me at the place that I went, including my first appointment, my second appointment, my referral, everything like that, all the appointments I had to pay for, it cost me just under 10 grand, and that's including the surgery itself. So to anyone who is watching this video, if you are sat on a waiting list right now, I am fucking sorry. And remember that I fucking love you, and you're gonna get there one day, and that day will make it all fucking worth it. I am so sorry. That is why I went private. Moving on. So the day of my surgery arrives, I am excited. I was expecting something to go wrong. Not necessarily with the surgery, but I had been waiting for so long and so long and so long, and I had had to say no to a couple of surgery dates. I'd had to push things back. I was waiting for someone to ring me up and go, LOL, sorry, something's happened. Next time. But it didn't. I got to London, I was there, things were happening, I got checked in early ass in the morning. The reception team were fucking lovely, by the way. I hadn't eaten because you're not allowed to eat after I think it's like 9 p.m. the previous night. Hadn't drunk anything since about 4. I was mildly dehydrated because I drink a lot of fucking water. And I was there, and I was nervous, and I was tipper-tapping, and I was like, I had stims I didn't even know I fucking had that day. It was ridiculous. But everyone was friggin' lovely. It was very full on, but also very relaxed. It was very, we're going to do this, and then this, and then this, and then this. And I was first. I was the first person to get surgery that day. I was first on the list. I was ready to go. And I think I went in at about 9:15, I believe, and I was out by somewhere around 11:30, 11:45. So I'm distracting myself looking at the ceiling, chattering away. There's at least 3 people around me talking about tattoos and things because they are all on display right now. They are like all up here. And I remember someone said, all right, it's in. You're going to start to feel like you've had a few glasses of champagne, to which I started laughing and said, I don't think I've ever had more than half a glass of champagne, so I've got no idea how that feels. And they went, well, we're going to find out. It was hilarious. They were all so sweet. And then I went all lightheaded and the world went really widdly widdly woo, and I assume that's how champagne feels. And then I woke up. So for anyone wondering, how does anesthesia feel? I have no friggin' idea. You are concentrating and then suddenly you're not. And you're in another room with lights and people saying, hey, how you doing? And you're like, huh? What time is it? What day is it? What? And you feel really groggy, but you feel fine, or at least I did. I'm not going to tell you how to feel. I promised I wouldn't do that and I'm not gonna. I felt fine, just very lightheaded, a bit dizzy and just a bit sort of like discombobulated, I suppose. But you come to and you're fine. And then my medical team sort of sat me up. They said, do you want a drink of water? Have a sit. Can you stand? And I could stand. It was weird because you sort of feel like the world isn't quite... The best way I could describe it is when you have pins and needles in your feet and you put your foot down and you can tell your foot's there, you can feel the pressure, but you get the tickling sensation. It's like that, but without the tickling. So you've got pins and needles, but you can't feel the pins and needles. You also just can't feel anything else. And you're sort of like floating while you're standing there and you're like, okay, this is fine. It's okay. And they put me in a wheelchair to wheel me back downstairs and everything. But I could stand and I could walk. I could walk from my bed to the toilet. Within about half an hour, they brought me some food and I was eating. I had some soup and it was really, really, really good. Something else that happens when you have top surgery is that you have drains put in. So I've still got the scars, a tiny little dot round about here, where they put some needles, I assume, up into you to drain out any fluid and any excess buildup in your chest area. And they give you 2 massive plastic bottles. Now they're different depending on where you go. The place where I went gave me plastic bottles. Imagine a sort of sports bottle that you would take to the gym, that size, but made of plastic and it's see-through. And on the side it has a measurement so you can see how many milliliters you've lost or whatever. I'm gonna tell you right now, I never reached the first mark. I was worried for a bit, but I was told it was fine. Everyone, you know, discharges, I guess, at different levels. I had them in for just over a week, I think, and nothing. No, barely a drop. So whether you fill them up completely or you don't fill them up at all, don't panic. Whatever you do is completely normal. So you have these drains, which are the bottles, and they have the needle in you, which has been taped over, and then coming out of it, there's these big sort of see-through wire tubes, and they go into the bottles so that you can drip away. The thing with the bottles was I was so scared of like yanking them out of myself or accidentally tripping over them that I like held them for a while. I was sitting in bed with them propped in my lap while I was eating my dinner. When I went to go to the bathroom, I held them up with one hand and like shimmied the boxes off with the other hand and like did everything one-handed because I was so scared. And then the nurses very kindly told me, you can put them down on the floor, it will be fine. And I got over that very slowly, but it did take me a few days to be comfortable letting the drains just sit where I couldn't feel them. It was very freaky. So yeah, the drains, enjoy them. Anyone who does this surgery, anyone who has had this surgery, tell me about your drains down in the comments below. Did you fill them? Did you not? How did you carry them as well? Because I found a really nifty way of carrying mine. So I got a little rucksack, which I had worn to London, turned it around, wore it on my front, and it had a zip that went up the top. So instead of zipping open at the front, it zipped all the way over the top and you could open it. So I plunked the drains in there, zipped it back up, tucked some of the wires in, and then put my hoodie on over the top. So I just had this massive rucksack sitting there, and the drains were just sitting here, ironically where the tatas used to be. Now I'm going to answer one of the questions someone asked me over on my Instagram. So they said, can you tell, like on the day, can you tell that it's happened? Do you know that it's happened? So mentally, of course, yes, you do. Mentally, you know this is happening, you've prepared for it, you know what has happened to your body. But that does not mean that your brain and your eyes are caught up with the rest of you. So I prepared myself because I watched a few videos where people talked about, and my therapist talked about it as well, they talked about how you might find that your gender dysphoria gets worse initially for a little bit after surgery because you've had such a big change to your body. And while you've been looking forward to it for so long, it's still a big change that your brain has to get used to. So looking at yourself in the mirror, you're not what you're used to seeing. So even though the excitement is there, your brain might also take a little while to catch back up with you. And I was very aware that this could happen. I was prepared. I was emotionally like, okay, if I start feeling this, don't worry, that kind of thing. But luckily for me, it never happened. I mentally knew this is going to happen. I think it helped that I didn't really have much there to begin with. So it wasn't a really massive change. But luckily, yeah, I avoided that. Every time I looked in the mirror, I looked down at my chest, I was very happy, and I didn't actually end up going through any of that at all. I just sort of felt the euphoria of, yes, I've done it! Ah, exciting times! But please don't worry if that does happen to you, or if it has happened to you. I have read many sources and heard from my therapist himself. It does happen. It's perfectly fine. It doesn't mean that you horribly regret it. It just means that something has changed. Something big and huge has changed. It's exciting, but your brain and your eyes are looking at it and going like, ah! So don't panic if that has happened to you. Something that I will say as the day has progressed is, particularly in the first sort of couple of weeks, I experienced what I referred to as phantom boob. So I've seen documentaries talking to people who are amputees who've lost an arm or fingers or a leg or a limb, something like that, or even an ear, and they talk about how sometimes they get like a phantom itch on the bit that's missing and they can't quite understand and they can't itch it and stuff, or sometimes they forget that it's missing even if it's been years and they try to use it and things like that, and I always thought that was fascinating. And then it happened to me. Particularly in the first few days, in the first week and a bit, it was really, really strong. So whenever I laughed, that's when I would feel the phantom boob the most. So on your chest, what I got was I had the 2 drains going in, and I had big amounts of obviously scarring and tissue and stuff, and you have the plasters and the bandages, and then you have a bunch of foam padding over the top, really thick, strong foam padding. It came out to probably about like here, the foam that was around my chest, and then you have the garment over the top, the medical garment, which zips up and it's like holds it all in place, really, really strong. And that makes you feel tight and held in, and it makes you feel really, really bulgy in the stomach area because it's just your top is going in and everything else is going out. But one of the things that does is that you feel very flat, and it's great, and you know that it's flat because you literally, there is nothing fucking there. But when I started laughing, like we'd watch something on the telly, or one of my friends or my mom or someone would say something to me and I would laugh, I was worried it would hurt, so I tried to stop myself laughing for a while, but when I realised, no, my body I can sneeze, that was terrifying. My first sneeze, I was scared I'd rip my entire stitches out, but it was fine, we moved on. So laughing, you know, you move your shoulders, you are expecting the jiggle. And it didn't come, but I felt like it was supposed to, and I had this weird sensation of like, haha, I'm laughing. There's something there, but there's not, but there is, but there's not. And that was the first time I was really, really conscious of the fact that, like, no, I'm flat. There's no chest there, kind of thing. And so, yes, to answer the Instagrammer's question, I was aware, and when I had phantom boob, that really just made me hyper aware that, like, it's gone. And then it made me laugh more because I'd be laughing and feeling nothing, and you feel there is numbness all through your chest as well. So I would laugh, feel nothing, think, do I feel something? Do I feel nothing? And then laugh more because it was just fucking funny. So yeah, to answer that question, could I tell? Yes and no, but mostly yes. Now I'm going to talk about something that was not so pleasant, and that was what hit me on about day 2, and it lasted until about day 9 or 10, and that was backache. So for the first several weeks post-top surgery, you have to sleep at an angle. They say 45-degree angle. So when I was in London, we propped me up on a bunch of pillows, which was fine initially, but because they were so soft and squidgy, it meant that I didn't actually have any support. So all the support was coming from sort of like my ass and my shoulders, and my back, especially my lower back, started to absolutely kill. So again, not saying this will happen to you, but because it happened to me, I want to warn anyone who's getting this kind of surgery, bring something solid to put against your back for the first few weeks while you're sleeping at a 45-degree angle, otherwise it absolutely kills. I'm going to carry on with some of the negatives because they all sort of hit very early on and at once, but then we're going to finish with a load of the positives because it does get better the more you go on. One of the biggest downsides for me was the lack of concentration. Now this really hit me from pretty much day 1 up until about day 20, nearing the end of the first month, to be honest. It will probably affect different people differently. For me, it was a combination of two things. One, obviously I'd just been under anaesthesia, I had woken up and it was still coming out of my system, but also I was on very, very strong painkillers. You're on antibiotics, you're on anti-swelling things, you're on pain meds, and all of that concoction in my brain just completely made me lose focus. I felt like I was walking with my head in the clouds at all times. I was walking along and I could feel my feet touching the ground and I was in control of my body, but it was a little bit like being slightly drunker than you want to be, and also really, really high, but not in a fun way. Like, it wasn't a bad trip, but it wasn't a fun trip. This was not something I would ever want to do again. My brain usually is a place full of noise and chaos and ideas and thoughts, and it's all really exciting. It's like being in a bouncy castle and you're just grabbing at ideas and things all the time in the middle of a fantasy world, and it's great. But in the first couple of weeks, really strongly, and then it only really petered off after about a month, I had next to nothing in my brain. I had the odd snippet of a song, quite a lot of Scrubs the musical actually, but even focusing on a conversation I was having with someone was hard. I couldn't type, I couldn't text, it took too much energy, everything felt blurry, I couldn't read the messages, and my friends were sending me lovely messages but I couldn't read them, so I was having phone calls instead, but even then I couldn't concentrate, so instead I sent voice notes, and my friends would send me voice notes back going, "Oh my god, you sound awful, are you okay?" And I'm going, "I'm fine, I'm happy, I just can't concentrate." And there were so many things I wanted to do. I wanted to read some books, I wanted to write some scripts, I wanted to do some cosplay practice and prep and things, but I couldn't, because even something as simple as just sewing and embroidering, I couldn't focus. Everything hurt my brain. But I didn't have the really bad headache yet. I'll talk about the really bad headache in a minute and what caused that, but yeah, the biggest thing for me was just total lack of ability to concentrate and really zoning out all the time. I felt like I was just half there and it was not fun. This next one I'm going to talk about happened about sort of over the first week. I really noticed it on day 3 and it sort of subsided by about day 8, and that was bloated fingers and bloated arms. So you're wearing a garment, it's really tight, you've got loads of foam underneath, you're packed in tight together, and this means that like some of the blood circulation around my arms just wasn't quite as it should have been. So my arms and my chest felt puffy anyway, and sometimes I'd feel my fingers tingling. My solution to this was to lift them up, wiggle them a little bit, move them around, shake my shoulders a bit. Some of the big pieces of foam I did end up shifting and moving just a little bit because they were digging under my armpits. So when I sat at certain positions, I would essentially be cutting off my own blood circulation. So do watch that and don't be afraid to sort of trim the very corners off the pieces of foam. If they're not there to compact your chest and they're just in the way, yeah, do what I did and just like hack them off a little bit, but don't go too nuts. So yeah, bloaty fingers and bloaty arms, not the worst, but a little bit annoying and uncomfortable. This next one is not necessarily bad, but it was annoying at points, and that is a really over-heightened sense of hearing and sense of smell. Now this hit me from, I think it was day 2, day 2 I started noticing this, and it took about 2 weeks to start disappearing completely. So what happened to me was I was on all these drugs, essentially. I was on really strong opioids, I was on anti-inflammatories and all of this, that and the other, and it for some reason meant that I could smell things and I could hear things way too loudly. So I would smell things, even if it smelled nice, it would make me feel a bit because it was too strong. I would smell a really nice bolognese that was cooking and I would have to shut the door because it was just overpowering. It was way too much. Sweet things as well, I went completely off sweet stuff. It was too sickly. Even a really nice sort of zesty lemony cake, no, it was too much. I couldn't even eat it. It didn't make me want to be sick, but the smell was too much. I felt like it was in my head, which didn't help because I was already foggy. The sound was a very similar thing. I could hear cars driving probably 5 streets away or so. I could hear them sort of turning round, and God, the one time an ambulance went past, I thought I was going to die. It did start to fade off in the sort of second week, and I really noticed it had disappeared after a few days where I couldn't really smell or hear anything, but it was really distracting, and it meant that I couldn't always enjoy the food as much because it just smelt so strong, and noises as well, particularly when I'll talk about something that happened when I was coming off the pain medication. Having a heightened sense of hearing really did not help with that either. So yeah, I could hear things way too loudly and also not concentrate. So words and sentences were sort of coming half into my brain, but they were loud. The telly was loud. The telly 3 rooms away was loud. It was not the worst of it, but it was nonetheless very not fun. Alright, this is the worst bit that I'm going to talk about. Ignore the back pain, ignore the floating around in your own head. This is the shitter. This is the worst bit. This is the stuff that happened from about day 6 until about day 8 or 9. Another content and trigger warning here, all the ones I said at the beginning. This is the bit where I'm going to talk about drug abuse and withdrawal. This is the bit where I'm going to talk about nausea and medication, and just a quick heads up. This is the one time that I said this was not worth it. I would like to preface this section by saying I knew at the time, even when I said it, that looking ahead into the future me would find it worth it. And looking back now, I do. I don't regret it. I would do the whole thing all over again. Absolutely I would. But trigger warning and content warning, I, at this point in my recovery, said to all of my friends and my family, I said, this is not worth it. This one experience that I had. However, I knew, and I did say to them at the time as well, I know in a few weeks and months it will be worth it, but right now it's not. So as of today, absolutely was worth it, but I want to be brutally honest, and so yeah, that's what I wrote in my notes in my diary. This was not worth it. So what happened? Here we go. So the thing that happened to me hit about day 6 and it finished by about day 9, so it was relatively quick in terms of the recovery, but it was the worst part. So what happened was I was on really strong opioid painkillers. I was on the anti-inflammatories and everything, but predominantly right now I'm going to talk about the opiates. Opiates. One of those words. So I was on super strong, hella painkillers. Something you should know about me is I have never taken them before. I don't take painkillers as a matter of course. I've been very lucky I haven't had to, and also they don't really seem to do very much for me, so I've never bothered. If I have a cold or something, I might take cold medication and occasionally hay fever meds, but that's about it. So my body is not used to painkillers at all. And so immediately after surgery, I was on, I think possibly 5 or 6 a day at certain points to really like sort you out in the first few days. And this was a huge hit. My body was like, whoa, what the fuck is happening? But also thank you, because this could hurt a lot. But what happened was you're supposed to wean off them and slowly take less and less and less. But what happened to me, learn from my mistakes, is that I probably weaned myself off them far too quickly. So instead of slowly weaning myself off them, instead of going from say 5 a day to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1, I went from 5 a day, the next day I took 3, the day after that I took 1, and then I took no more because I was so done. I didn't want to be on these anymore. Really bad decision, cannot emphasize this enough. Do not do what I did. Learn from my mistakes. Just stick out the head thing for a few more days. It'll be way more worth it than what I ended up doing. So I dropped down and I had taken about 1 painkiller on day 6 or so, and my brain was feeling less foggy. I was feeling better. I didn't have pain. I just didn't in my chest. I had some backache, but I did not have chest pain. And I was saying to everyone, I was like, look, I would rather have the chest pain. I would rather have searing pain in my chest right now than have my head feeling all over the place and like I can't control anything that I'm doing. It is awful. I don't like it. I want to be creative again. And then I went into what I can only describe as the worst 24-48 hours ever. And I was in withdrawal. I knew I was in withdrawal because I have played a character who was a heroin addict. And when I played this character, I did a fuck ton of research. I read accounts from people who have gone through it. I watched documentaries, I read a lot of shit, I made out timelines, I knew exactly what was going on. I knew a hell of a lot about it for someone who has never touched this stuff and never intends to. And so what happened to me was pretty much bullet point by bullet point all the things I had enacted with that character. And the only time I ever laughed during that 24-48 hours was when I realized this, and I went, it's like I willed it into being by playing that fucking character couple of years ago. But all joking aside, I did. I went through withdrawal. It was not fun. I turned into an ex-junkie for 48 hours and it was fucking the worst. As I said, I'm not used to heavy painkillers at all, so my body suddenly having loads of them and then having none, I crashed, and I crashed hard. I was no longer hungry and I sat up in bed at about midnight and I started throwing up my insides. And I didn't stop, and then about a quarter of an hour later I did it again, and then about half an hour later I did it again, and then for several hours, I was throwing up on the half hour, every half an hour. You could have set your watch to me, boom, every half an hour. And I was trying to sleep in between, but I couldn't because I was getting this headache and it was worming its way through my brain and it was getting worse and worse. And I felt like my brain was too big for my skull. I remember thinking to myself, fuck, has something happened? Have I got fluid on the brain? Did something happen in the surgery or something completely unrelated to the surgery? Has something gone wrong? Is my brain going to explode? Has something happened to me? What is going on? And yeah, after a little while I realized what was happening and there was not a damn thing I could do. I wasn't going to go back on the meds. I couldn't have if I wanted to because I would have thrown them up about a quarter of an hour later. So I had to just fucking do it. I couldn't sleep. I didn't sleep for about 24 hours because anytime I tried, I would wake up minutes later and be sick. And I had this horrible pounding brain altering headache. And on top of all of that, my heart was beating really fast. I was having heart palpitations. It was crazy. I could feel them pulsing in my brain. My heart was going and I could feel it more because there was nothing in the way. I could feel this chest and it was going and then it would start beating even faster and that would indicate I was about to be sick. So I started knowing the signs. It happened every quarter of an hour, half an hour, so much that I would feel my heart suddenly starting to race. I would throw up. About 10 minutes later, I would stop and my headache would continue and I would have about 10 minutes of just the headache and then it would all start again. My heart would start going and it was fucking bad. And I still had my heightened sense of smell, so I could smell the vomit even after we cleaned up. I could hear things way too loud. I could hear cars going past, which made my head feel worse. And I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat anything. I could barely drink because every time I drank water to try and hydrate myself, I would throw it back up again. And this carried on all day and into the next evening. It was the worst I've ever felt in my entire life. I thought my brain was going to explode blood out of my ears and I thought that my insides were going to just come up. I thought I was going to vomit up my entire intestines. It was horrendous. And that was the point at which about 7 hours into it, I said, this was not worth it. And I meant it. But at the same time, I said that, I also acknowledged and said, I know it's going to be over. I know it. And in a few weeks, I'll look back and say, no, it was worth it. But brutally honest time, in that moment, it wasn't. So to avoid that, anyone who's watching this video who does go and get surgery, just fucking stick the meds out. Do it. Follow your medical team's advice. Do whatever you have to do. Don't end up like me. Don't end up enacting and fucking living as the junkie character you played for 2 years. It is not worth it. The headache itself did calm down quite a lot. It took about 2 days to completely sort of fade into the background, but it stayed in the background until about week number 2. So all the way through that second week, I still had a bit of a headache and a little bit of nausea as well. I remember when I went back to London to get my drains taken out on the tube, I still felt kind of sick and I was very afraid of going on the tube and the trains. I didn't want to throw up on people. I didn't, but it was just this constant feeling at the very back of your head of just like, oh God, I could be, no, I'm not. No, I am, no, I'm not. No, I am, no, I'm not. And eventually I learned that I wasn't going to be sick. It was just the feeling, but that didn't make it any more pleasant. But that is the last of the shit stuff. So let's get back into the lighthearted and not so bad stuff now. Something I want to talk about is the hunch. So from about, what did I write in my diary? Day 1, yeah, day 1 until week 6, literally. When I first had the surgery, now you're wearing this big garment, everything's very tight, and your natural instinct to sort of walk along like this and sort of hunch it, you know, you want to protect it, you want to feel protected, and you are feeling yourself being pulled forwards as well, just a little bit because everything's so tight. But what I had to keep going over, as the nurses told me whenever I had my checkups, they're like, no, you can roll your shoulders back a little bit, just breathe, stand up straight, because number 1, you don't want your scars to heal tight, because then they won't heal right, and also like it's better for your body, it's better for you, so stand up straight. And every time I stood up straight, I suddenly remembered, oh, I can. Because the garment was so tight, it did occasionally make you feel like you couldn't draw a breath, but you could. You were still breathing. Every time you took a deep breath, it would expand with you. The foam went with you. So the hunch kept happening until at least week 6. I would find myself as I was walking around or just sitting, I would be naturally hunching and I'd have to make an effort to pull my shoulders back a little bit and just relax. Eventually it gets easier and it gets better, but yeah, you do sort of hunch, especially because in the time before I'd got the top surgery, when I was like wearing a binder and walking around, you would hunch just a little bit to sort of hide even more of your shape. So I'd feel myself walking around like this, whereas now I can walk around like this and be like, yeah, what the fuck? But the hunch definitely was a thing I had to work on. So if it happens to you, don't be afraid. You can stand straight, you can stand tall, and it is better for you to do so. But yeah, the hunch was fun. Something else that was quite entertaining, for me at least, was my fear of washing. So in the first sort of week or so of surgery, you don't take your garment off, you don't wash your top at all. You can wash like your arms, you can wash everywhere else, you can sit in a very shallow bath, you just can't get it wet at all. You have to be really careful with your top half. So I was flanneling my face and washing on my armpits and stuff. And then when the foam comes out and you are wearing the garment with no foam underneath and you have just got your, your big patches, as I call them, the big patches on the big sort of bandages and stuff, you then get given more bandages so you can peel them off, have a little wash, put the new ones back on again, and then put your big garment back on top. And I was terrified. I was so sure I was going to do something wrong. I had images of tearing my stitches out by catching it on a fingernail or something. I would look at it in the mirror and be like, wow, that's me. But then you can see it. You can see where, if you don't want to get graphic, skip away for about 20 seconds. In the mirror, you can see, because looking down you can't quite see it, but in the mirror you can see where the two pieces of skin have been joined. And you can see the stitches. They're still in there. You can see the stitches. And you can literally see where two pieces of you have been attached together. And there's a red line. And you can see little bits of scab and things. And if you pulled, which you don't, you know that it would split. It's two pieces that have been attached together. And it is so fucking scary. I was terrified I was going to do it wrong. And the first time that I peeled the peely bits off for the nipples, and they are going to be the last things to heal, they were completely scabbed over and I was so scared. I didn't even wash them properly the first time that I washed because I was scared I would pull the scab off too early and rip everything out and it would just pop. At one point I remember saying to a friend, like, I feel like if I do something wrong, the nips are going to pop off, like, the pop in a bottle, like it's going to go, and I was like, I know. And they went, like, logically, that's not going to happen, right? You know that they're stitched in, they're attached. And I was like, I know, but I can't rationalize it with my brain. I feel like they're going to go. They didn't. Don't worry. They're still there. It's fine. But if you get scared of washing, don't worry. I have checked. It's perfectly normal as well. So yeah, you see your stitches, you see the scars, you very carefully, you use really nice, gentle, like, cleansing stuff, and you just very gently, you shower it down, don't get in the bath for ages, and yeah, you just have a nice gentle wash, and then you put all the stuff back on. On another happy thought, thinking about the first time I ever washed, I have never laughed so much in my life. I don't even know if it tickled or not. It was just such a weird sensation because you can't feel anything. I can feel things now, so I can currently feel here. I can feel my fingers here, and then here, so my scar is about there, right? I can't feel that. I can feel pressure if I tap it, but I can't feel it. And just a little bit above it and just a little below it, can't feel anything. But up here I can feel. But then you get further down and you can't. In the first few weeks of recovery, you can't feel anything. Like, there's a whole, like the size of your hands up here, I couldn't feel a thing. And that meant that washing, I was watching myself washing my body, but there was no sensation at all. And it was the weirdest thing. And I just started laughing. And people were knocking on the door being like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, it's just fucking funny. And I was there washing, being like, this is ridiculous. And every time I stopped laughing, I'd start again because it was just funny. So I think it was gender euphoria at the time, looking at myself and going, it's me, yay! But also just, what the fuck? So fairly entertaining moment for you there. Yeah, the first wash, terrifying, scared I was going to rip my stitches out, but also just fucking funny. So over the course of my recovery, I had the drains taken out after about a week, and then the foam came off, the garment came off, and eventually over a few weeks, you don't have to wear your garment anymore. You are just wearing your tape, and the nipples are covered, and you've got sort of like bandages and plasters and things like that. And then a little while after that, you no longer have to wear the tape on your scars. You just have to cover up the nipples until all the scabs have completely come off, and then you're fine. And you can wear everything, just, be careful and wash them and stuff. And they do recommend that you put on some cream. You can look up different sort of scar creams that can help and moisturize and things. So I've been using those as well. Just before I start answering some of the questions people ask me on Instagram, and again, if I don't answer something you want to know, chuck it in the comments down below. I'm an open book. I will show you my finished result. I'm actually going to do a comparison. Sorry, I'm going to tease you now. I'm going to show you a picture right now, and I'm going to show you a little clip, and I'm going to show you pictures of how it healed from the very beginning when I could first see it, when I first got the foam taken off, and I'm going to show you all the way through, and then I will show you what it looks like today. So if you are not comfortable with seeing scars, I will probably put timestamps in this video, so just skip ahead to the next one because there is going to be healing scars and wounds in this. So if you don't want to see them, skip. Anyone who does, welcome. Let's look at some scars, shall we? This first picture is from week 2 when I first saw myself. You can see all the lines and the stitches and everything still hasn't healed. Going into a couple of weeks after that, you can see that you can still see all the stitching and stuff, but it's getting less raw. And now we're going into about the 2nd month, nearly the end of the 2nd month here. You can see all the scabs. This one's really prominent because I've just had a bath, but the scabs are starting to lift. And this last picture is from last week when everything was starting to heal really, really nicely. All right, so this is what it looks like today. So as you can see, this is my tattoo. This is the tattoo I've had. This is my heavy D&D tattoo. So all the dice, all the leaves in the middle are exactly the same. To give you an idea of just how much is missing, this leaf used to be the size of this one. So it was a huge maple leaf. So it came out all the way to about here. And then these went up and over. So I had chest to probably about here. Again, really wasn't a lot. But this went up over the top, the nip was probably about here, and then I had another leaf that went completely underneath. So there are 2 leaves that are completely gone. So 2 more of these sort of maple leaves right underneath. They are disappeared, they have gone, they are sitting in a hospital bin somewhere, and these got shifted, they got moved, so originally they'd have been down here, boop, put up there. The free nipple graft, there you go. The scar goes all the way up, it goes a little bit under your armpit, so here's my armpit, sits just about here. And you can feel a little knobbly bit here. This is where the old stitches are. There's a few of them, like there's a stitch here that I can feel that hasn't disintegrated yet. And then it goes up and they don't quite meet in the middle, but the scar itself is still here and you can't see it because it fits and it goes into this leaf right here. So this line of this leaf, that is part of the scarring, and right under here as well, it goes all the way along. And you can see you've missed a tiny little bit off this leaf, but really not very much. And this leaf as well has a tiny little piece taken off of it. So this scar goes all the way along and up here. So the end points are here and here. So that's the end of the scar. So this piece was not touched at all, those pieces. And the scars go all the way around and it goes up to here. And again, finishes just under the armpit. So this is me today. All right, now I'm going to answer some of the questions from the Instagram, so bear with me here. All right. So the first question that I got quite a lot was, am I glad that I got it done? And the answer is yes, obviously, absolutely yes. It was completely the right decision for me. It was euphoriaizing, that's a word. It was gender euphoric, it was amazing. From the second I got it done, from the second I woke up, I felt a feeling of relief. I actually managed to make a pun where I said, oh, I'm glad I got that off my chest, and one person laughed at me. It was great. Thank you very much to that one nurse who took pity on me. So yes, for me, it was absolutely the right decision. I knew this because it was what I wanted the entire time. I was really happy as soon as it had been done, and it has made me feel euphoric ever since. I can finally wear all the clothes I want to wear, and I feel like I look the way that I want to look. I'm still working on bulking the shoulders, but in general, just having this, or rather not having this, fucking yes. It was amazing. So absolutely, am I glad I had it done? Hell yes. Right decision for me. This next question I really liked. It was, are the results what I expected? And the honest answer is no, because the results I got are better than I ever expected. When I went to see the surgeon, I knew I had a massive chest piece and I knew that I could lose some of it and it might end up looking wonky, and I didn't care. I had made peace with that. I haven't seen my tattoo artist since, and I'm probably going to try to hide, but I had made peace with the fact that my ink would not look the same anymore, but it was worth it to me. That was going to be worth it. To get the body and the shape and everything that I wanted, absolutely was going to be worth losing a bit of my tattoo. But I had no idea that my surgeon would be like, let's do this, and say, bring on the challenge and make it look as friggin' stunning as it does. When the scars have started to fade, you will not know that it is an incomplete tattoo. So no, it's not what I expected, but in such a brilliant way, it is so much better. This question's really sweet. What is your most positive memory? I think my most positive memory from just before I got it done was on the day that I went in, because everyone in my work group chats at the places I work had sent in messages. Even people who I hadn't seen for weeks had posted in the group chat and just gone, "We love you, we support you, tell us you're okay, messages when you can." And all my bestest friends like Kat and Rowan and people had sent me private messages and just sent me loads of love and been like, "You're gonna do it, it's gonna be great." And my family as well were really supportive. I'm very lucky I have a ridiculously supportive family, so everyone was really chill. So that was a really good positive memory from before I went in, just knowing that I had a lot of people backing me up, basically. One of the most positive memories from after having it done was my workplace. They knew I would have to be away for several weeks, and then when I came back, they were all like, "Right, you can't lift anything heavy, so you're doing this and you're doing this, you are not doing this, and we will find another way for you to do this." And I was like, okay. I thought I was just going to be sort of, resignated to doing this one particular thing. And they were like, no, we've thought it all out. Okay, you can still do all the things you love doing. You can still perform and do all these things, but we're going to do it different. And the amount of care that they had to just be like, we're going to make sure that you can do your job and continue to enjoy doing your job, but we're going to do it safely, was friggin' great. I already knew my workplace was very good because the day I mentioned to them that I was going to change my name, I had a new badge. We've all got like badges that we wear, and I had a new one within a matter of minutes. It was fucking amazing. So positive memories really surround the people that are around me before and after. So those are my most positive memories there. This question was quite popular as well, and it was variations on, was it scary? Yes is the answer to that one. Yes, it was scary. I was definitely way more nervous than I thought I would be. I was excited as well, but I was very nervous. And everything afterwards, like the washing was scary, and seeing yourself with really big scars was scary because I was afraid I was going to do something wrong, I was going to mess it up, and I really didn't want to have to go back on any medication and go back into surgery again. So that bit was definitely scary. But overall, the experience was a positive one. It wasn't too scary. So scary, yes, but scary good. And the final question was, what was harder than I expected and what was easier? The thing that was harder than I expected was just being tired all the time. Even when I had recovered from the headache and the withdrawal, and when I was off the pain medication and everything, and my brain was slightly less foggy, I was still tired. I would go for a walk and I would gain some energy for a little bit, but I spent a lot of time just sort of sitting or standing, leaning against a wall, trying to engage or trying to watch something. I had next to no concentration for several weeks, but really was just tired for a good couple of months until it really started to shake off and I could actually do things again. Going back to work definitely helped because I did quite long days, but it really just got me back in the zone and back in the mood. So being tired was much harder than I thought. I do not deal with being bored very well, and I ended up feeling very bored a lot of the time because I just couldn't do anything. What was easier than I expected? I would have to say the easiest part as a sort of singular experience for me was being able to just get on with the next thing. Sure, I was tired and I was exhausted and I had headaches and various different things were happening, but through it all, I was still able to focus, laser focus on the next thing. I was bored, and when I get bored, I was so frustrated, but I could still see the next objective. I had an appointment within a matter of days and weeks at certain points, and there was always the next step. And it was much easier than I was expecting to just get to each of those. The time moved faster than I was expecting it to. At times I did feel really ill or bored or just tired of being tired, but I could still pick up and do something, go for a walk. I could still do stuff enough that I could get to the next milestone. So just, I think getting through it in general was much easier than I was expecting. So that's the end of the questions from my Instagram, but if you have any others, chuck them in the comments below and I will answer you. And as always, if you want to DM me privately because you don't want to post in public, you can do that as well. DM me over on my Instagram. Alright then, my wonderful jelly spoons, that is it for today's episode of Monday Madness. A fairly serious one, but with some, hilarity sprinkled in for good measure because hell, it's me. I am enjoying my wonderful brand new life as a chaotic fae-being pirate who also looks vaguely rockstarish. It's fun. I get to wear the clothes that I've always wanted to wear, and it's really gender affirming and pretty awesome. There are more things in my future in terms of being gender affirmed, but right now I am pretty darn happy with where I am at. All the people I've surrounded myself with, my partner, my friends, my family, they're all friggin' great, and you guys are great as well. So whatever you are going through, whatever is happening in your life, be it good, bad, somewhere in between, you are going to be amazing. You got this. You can do it. Hang on in there. Life is fantastic, and there is always something on the horizon that's going to be pretty damn good. All right, my wonderful jelly spoons. I love you all. Goodbye for now.